Very long day today, and I'm getting a late start. Obviously, the top of the agenda is Evergrande. It seems things are finally starting to reverberate in Hong Kong and now on Wall Street. Obviously, the Evergrande situation is a bit of an unknown. I wouldn't say that we're set to have a global financial crisis 2.0. We don't know that yet. The reason why you're seeing a big sell-off is precisely because of these unknowns. There was I believe, Asia's largest insurance company had experienced a huge sell-off today because people were speculating. People were pricing in the risk that this insurance company might own Evergrande bonds or be exposed to them in some way. And the insurance company, in the middle of the day, came out and said, hey, we have zero exposure to Evergrande. Our balance sheet looks fine for now. And, things started to recover a little bit. And so you need to understand exactly what you're looking at when you see red across the board. It might be a sign of things to come, or it could be a blip in some cases. It's uncertainty. Now, I'm probably would say I would say I'm leaning towards the camp that says, hey, this is a really bad systemic crisis. And if it's not one already, it will be soon, because Evergrande is still, I guess they're still technically paying on their bonds. I don't know if they've completely defaulted on all of their debt, but pretty soon, anybody who owns Evergrande debt, it's going to be non-performing. And they're going to have a big gaping hole in their balance sheet, depending on how exposed they are to it, and that will have ripple effects throughout Chinese finance. And of course, considering China is kind of Wall Street's been trying to sell China as a developed market rather than a developing market. They have been pushing customers more and more in to expose themselves to China, and that is where we have risk back here in the United States. See, Wall Street is, the epicenter of global finance. And so once you start seeing products marketed on Wall Street, that's when it becomes, when there's risk of a systemic global crisis. It's not like this crisis, if it evolves into one, true financial crisis, will be limited to just China. So the question I would be asking here is more a political one than an economic one. I think that it's clear that if Evergrande is truly allowed to collapse, as it appears it's in the process of doing, the process of the systemic collapse will begin in earnest. But what we've been trained over the past few years, over the past more than a decade, is that when it comes to a potential financial crisis, governments want to bail out wherever the problems are, and they want to kick the can down the road, paper over the mold, and sell the house as is. But that's what's happened in the U.S. and in Western governments. It's what's happened in Europe. But those governments do not necessarily have the same incentives, the same interests as the government in Beijing. Does the Chinese Communist Party really have such a vested interest in the solvency of Evergrande and their capitalist financial sector? Or would it better serve the interests of the Communist Party for the capitalist class in China to take a big haircut and feel some economic pain and lose some of their influence? And so that's what I mean when I say this is a political question at this point more than an economic one. Will Xi Jinping step into the brink or step into the fold? Not really sure what the right word would be there, but you get the point. Is he going to come and ride to the rescue like Jerome Powell would? Is the People's Bank of China going to open the floodgates of liquidity? That I can't answer at this point. Because frankly, Evergrande's problems can't be solved by the People's Bank of China. They would have to be solved by the Chinese working in collaboration with the Fed to bail out Evergrande, because Evergrande, like so many emerging market actors, is not indebted in its own currency. It's saddled with dollar-denominated debt. Of course, the Chinese can't print dollars. They have to earn dollars. We, the United States, print dollars and we spend them overseas, which is why we here in the U.S. are able to run massive trade deficits year after year, because everyone else has to work to earn dollars. We in the U.S. can just print dollars and buy whatever we want from the rest of the world. And so if we have financial instability here in the U.S., we have another Lehman type of moment. The federal government and the Fed can just step in and say, hey, we're going to bail you out. We have an unlimited supply of US dollars, and we're going to give you as many dollars as you need to remain solvent. But China can't do that, nor do I know that they really would want to if they could. Xi Jinping has shown that he wants to take China back to down a different path. More, he's trying to, I don't know if I would call it the Maoist path, but, a less globalist, market-oriented, Kissinger-centric kind of China. And if it causes a lot of pain, of course, for Xi's foreign adversaries, such as, the American globalist class, that's not such a bad thing for him either, I would think. Although I'm not entirely sure what China's dollar-denominated state debt looks like. I didn't research that before going into this. I know that overall, I think that their total debt, like public and private, is something in the neighborhood of 350% of GDP. But frankly, if I look at that and I'm in Xi's position, I'd say, hey, this level of debt is unsustainable. We need a reset of some point, of some kind. We need a debt jubilee. And so now that I, Xi, have consolidated my power, and I have, unlike these Western politicians, I have a much longer time horizon. I look 10 years down the road. Hey, what do I want the economy to look like? And I say, this debt, this is unsustainable. And I need a reset, and I want to take our medicine, and I want to get this over with sooner rather than later so that we can begin walking down the road to recovery. I think that as, a long-term dictator, that would be the rational thing for Xi to do. And so his incentives are very different from the incentives of somebody like Boris Johnson or Joe Biden or Emmanuel Macron or even of the Eurocrats. When you don't have the burdens of democracy weighing down on you, you can afford to think about what is in the long-term best interest of you as a leader and of and your country. And so I'm not counting on China to bail this situation out. I think that Xi looks at this. If I were in his shoes, I would look at the situation and say, I can weather this storm a lot better than the governments of Western countries. I think that I would look at it and I would say, I'm confident in my hold on power, and I think that if we have a real bad depression here, I will have a better chance of making it through than the folks in the West. And so, you have the chance here to where, yes, this will lead to a lot of pain in China, but if the contagion spreads across the world, it could destabilize Xi's Western adversaries significantly more than it destabilizes China. And so that's what I'm waiting to see. And also, I didn't even get to talk much about Wall Street. You've got folks on Wall Street who are really pushing investment in China, even up until the last month or two, and when things were looking really sketchy. BlackRock was saying, hey, don't be discouraged by, your losses in China. Everybody, let's double down on China and pump more money in there. That, to me, was very suspicious. But when you've got one of the largest asset managers in the world, if not the largest asset manager in the world, I can't remember exactly. I think BlackRock might be number one. I think it's BlackRock, Vanguard, then State Street, the top three. Or I should say in that order. I think it's in that order. And they've all got to have some significant exposure to China, even if it's a small percentage. I don't know, 5%. That might be a little too high. And I don't know how strong and resilient their balance sheets are. Um, that might have a very significant impact on them. Certainly, that's the way that BlackRock sounded in the media. It sounded to me like, hey, these guys really want people to put more money into China. Made me think they had quite a significant vested interest in the success of Chinese finance. But hey, maybe what the Fed will do is, let's say that there's a global financial crisis that originates in China and spreads across the world. The Fed is going to do everything they can to bail out everybody here, and so is Congress. Make no mistake about it. I think that if if BlackRock's about to go bust, if Vanguard and all these other guys, if Goldman's going bust, if J.P. Morgan's going bust, if it really were to come to that, Congress would be stepping in to bail those guys out. Now, what the world looks like at the end of it, what the dollar looks like at the end of that, I don't know. So I think this is a very interesting situation. There's a lot of forks in the road in which this could go. I think that there would have to be a lot of really bad luck for this to be kind of a worst case scenario, which in my case would be the best case scenario, because it would be the maximum collapse of the bubble, resetting us back to, burning off the underbrush and getting us back to a solid foundation. A lot would have to go wrong from the perspective of the financial elite for us to get to that point. It's not just Evergrande going bust. It's Evergrande going bust. It's that contagion spreading throughout Chinese finance. It's the contagion of Chinese finance spreading throughout the rest of the world, and it's the Western governments failing to prop up Western finance. So I think this is going to be a long-term story that I'm going to be discussing in depth a lot. So if there's anything I missed today, I'm sure I will hit it in the future. But those are my initial thoughts on the Evergrande crisis. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.